There's an expectation now that a KDMD event, a KDMD online event or in-person event meets certain standards.
Hi, I'm Mari Pierce-Quinones, and I'm here with Dar Maxwell, Manager of Distance Learning and Technology with Agility IRG. If you've attended an Ag Sector Council seminar or another KDMD event in the past, you've probably seen Dar sitting at the back of the room, making sure everything goes smoothly with the audio feed, the event recording, and both the technical and facilitation aspects of the webinar. She has a lot of perspectives to share on distance and blended learning, so we're excited to ask her a few questions today. So the first question is just on a bit of background. What brought you to the knowledge management field, and how did that prepare you for your role at KDMD?
I actually came to the KM field after about 20 years as a broadcast technician with ABC News and NPR and a bunch of other places. And I decided about 3 years ago to do a career change, and kept with the dissemination of information. That's kind of my reason for being. And doing it as a technician with broadcast was one way of doing it, with all the gear and putting everything together and pulling the cables and putting mics on everybody. And now I'm doing the same kind of thing, only adding the online element to it. And it's the same goal, is to make sure that the knowledge that people want to access, they can access it easily. So what we do with the project, and what I try to do, is make sure that every time we have an event or we have some information that we want to share out, is that we create a situation or create an environment in which people can access that information easily and quickly. And if there's a problem, then we solve that problem quickly, because the goal is that they get the information they want as easily as possible.
Originally, the USAID seminars began as in-person only events, and your team helped add the webinar component. Where does one start when building a webinar from scratch?
That's a really great question that we get asked a lot, because the folks that come into the event, either online or in the room, they just walk in and it's a great event and they experience it and they think, oh great, I can do this, which you can do, anybody can do it, but for each of the events that we do, there's a lot of preparation and planning, and a good team that works on it. That's the number one thing when you add any kind of element to it, is planning. You wouldn't give a live presentation without planning and preparation, and even possibly a little bit of rehearsal. Going through your materials, making sure you can pronounce all the words, making sure that the microphones and speakers work in the room, and that you will have people in the room actually listening to you as you present. So the same kind of things are applied for a webinar event, except there's a lot more technology involved. The same thing that you do for a live event, for an in-person event, is you do for a webinar event, also an online. You have the preparation, you have the planning, you work with the content, you work with the presenters, you make sure that you have participation and that the participants are having a good experience. You make sure that all the technology works. So all those steps. And at the beginning, when I first started, we were still online. We had a webinar element. We've been able to, with the support of the project, improve that. We've changed platforms. We've got a lot more people participating. It's a lot more interactive. So the product has gotten a lot better over the years, and it comes with planning. And we're very fortunate to have a client and a project that allows us to experiment and to innovate.
So with all of the tweaks and experimentations that you've done, what sort of reach have you got with webinars?
There are so many different ways to measure success, and we've definitely been able to reach the most amazing international diversity. I believe our client showed a map that showed exactly where we've reached, and I think we've touched every continent, which is pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. And it's neat for the live event, when we repeat a question from somebody online. And one of the first things we say is where that person is joining us from. And you can feel the room, who's sitting there. They've just come downstairs from lunch, or they had a cup of coffee. They come and they sit in the live room, and they realize that there's 100 people also online listening to exactly what they're listening to, from the Philippines, from Malawi, from Australia, from Rome. And it creates a buzz when we say, oh, so-and-so from Afghanistan has a question. Oh, Afghanistan, it's a neat thing. And so being able to touch internationally and having the access, creating an environment for those international people to attend the meeting easily is, that's a huge success. That's a great measure of success.
So you've already touched on this a little bit, but I want to delve a little bit deeper into your online facilitation. How do you approach it differently for your online audience than you would for an in-person audience?
The differences between in-person facilitation and online facilitation are the participants for the in-room event, they get the visual cues from the presenters. They get the visual cues from the person they're sitting next to. The presenters get to look at their participants and see them nodding and understanding or not understanding. The in-room participants get to then talk to the presenters afterwards. Online participants don't have that opportunity to have the visual cues that the in-room participants do. So I try to create an environment online that the online participants feel that they're not only attending an event, they're participating in the event. So as they enter the room, and I also look at it as if I were participating in this event, what I would want. I'm sitting there, in my cubicle on my computer, watching slides go by, yawn, I'm bored. What can I do to interest me? So one of the things that we're able to do with the platform we've chosen is we have, well, number one, when people come into the room and I see them first enter the environment, call out to them by name and ask them to introduce themselves in a chat box that we have, which then shows other people to do the same thing. Some people see each other that they know. I invite them to let us know where they're joining from, because that's something that everybody else can then see. And then we also have small polls that we just throw out asking for, where are you joining us geographically? How much experience do you have? Easy answerable questions, but what it does is it allows the participant to push a button or to say, hey, you care, this is neat, oh, look where everybody's from. So it brings them into the environment. When the event begins, we ask for comments or questions during the event. Just as if, if you're in the room live with the presenter and you think of a question, you're like, ooh, let me write that down real quick. We invite them to write down their comments or questions. As soon as somebody writes it down, we call out to them in the chat box and say, hey, Madi, thank you very much for that question. We'll get to it when we can, because as the online participant, I want to know that you're listening to me. That way that helps them come in and or stay in and feel like they're not just listening, but participating. And I think that's the key word. So it's a lot of interpersonal communication throughout the event.
So it sounds like a lot of your strategy is based around keeping them engaged. Exactly. So that all the other distractions of their computer screen are not tearing them away from the webinar. In addition to the distractions that you might encounter sitting at your desk as a member of the online audience, what other limitations do you as a facilitator encounter? And have you had to adapt your techniques due to those limitations or a lack of resources?
Quite honestly, every online event, we come into a new technical challenge that we then have to apply the next time. Because we have such an international audience on many of our events, we plan our events in such a way that we kind of shoot for the lowest common denominator of connectivity. So we try not to use live streaming video, which a lot of people are like, oh, but that's what it's all about. We now do headshots of the presenters, a static headshot with a bio, so whomever's speaking, you have a picture of them, because I want to know what they look like. I'm hearing them, I want to know what they look like. So we bring that up. We also, for some places where we know we're going to have serious bandwidth challenges, we make sure that folks can call in to listen to the audio. They can use a phone line rather than using their computer internet connection. And we've learned that because some of the countries and regions that we connect to just don't have the capability. We want them to be able to attend and participate in our events. So we plan for that, and we reach out to them in a way that they can access it without much problem on their part.
You've had a lot of experience with webinars, and you've gotten it down to a science almost on how to facilitate them. What's the wrong way to go about hosting a webinar?
The wrong way about doing it is pretty much the wrong way you would go about doing any event. Even if you have something that you want to talk about in front of 10 people, you would plan for that. You're not just going to wake up one morning and say, gee, gosh, I think I'm going to talk about how to build a rocket to the folks in my office. You're going to research it and plan it out and all that. So the wrong way to go about it is to assume you can just do it. oh, it's just online, I'll just, go to the URL, open it up, and everything will be fine. You have to stop and think, you have to plan, you have to have a few contingency plans. What if somebody kicks the plug on the wall and the computer goes down? So the wrong way would be not to plan and to think it's magic and you can just do it.
So we've talked a lot about the nuts and bolts behind online facilitation, and now we're going to talk about the direction that distance and blended learning will be headed in as part of USAID's KM strategy. How do you hope to see it will evolve?
It's well known, everybody repeats this a lot, especially on our project. Everybody learns differently. Everybody absorbs information differently. I'm somebody, for example, I really like lists and looking at the list over and over and over until I figure it out. So what we offer them with what we do and what we're beginning to do differently and more, and again, back to we have the opportunity to be innovative with stuff. We have an idea, we're allowed to put it out, is the many different ways that we deliver the information, or the many different ways that we deliver presentations, or the many different ways that we have an event, and then what we call post-event products. How we capture that event and then push it back out to other folks. We've got a myriad of different ways that stuff from a live event, from one person speaking to, say, 200, then gets captured and sent back out in, gosh, I could come up with 4 or 5 different ways that we send that product back out, because that's how people will access it. Mm-hmm. Rather than, saying that I want to find out about, back to grain harvesting. If I want to find out about grain harvesting and I Google it, I want to have all that variety of different ways to get that information. If it's a video interview with somebody, or if it's a Twitter chat, or if it's a blog, or if it's all those things we're creating from one presentation, because then everybody has that access. And I think you said, what's the future? We're doing it now, but it's something that we're going to continue doing because it's being widely accepted.
Well, thank you so much, Dar, for spending your time with us and talking a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of online webinar facilitation and some of the bigger picture stuff about the future of distance and blended learning.
You're very welcome.